Hello, confident eaters. I am so excited today to bring on our next guest, Lizzie Merritt. She is a weight loss coach, and we are actually connected through my business coach. And she also has a podcast that I will be on at some point too, depending on when you're listening to this episode. So, Lizzie, I'd love you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you.
Great. Amber, thank you so much for the invitation and for the opportunity to be here. So my name is Lizzie Merritt. I am a weight loss coach. I work for No BS Weight Loss, but my passion is helping women kind of let go of the shame that comes along with years of trying. I am a smart, confident woman, and why the heck can I not figure out all of this weight loss stuff? I've been doing it for decades, trying to lose weight. And why can I know what to do and not actually do it? But not only that, I love helping women see the pathway through, that it doesn't have to be through dieting, that there's a much friendlier way to go about weight loss, but also so that the real game is so that you can live your life, live the way you want to. As you mentioned, I have a podcast and I've written 2 books, and I just love the work I get to do.
Yeah, that's awesome. And the reason I'm so excited to talk to Lizzie too today is because I love that your approach to weight loss, you're not using diets, you're not using strict restriction. And a lot of times when people come to me, they think they have to choose a path. It's either, okay, I'm going to heal my relationship with food and stop binge eating, or I can lose weight. And I just have to choose one and I have to give up the other. But I always tell them, like, look, we can actually do these two things together and they're the same thing. Like the path to stopping binge eating is actually gonna be the same path to weight loss because we have to stop binge eating in order to lose weight.
I completely agree. I have a number of weight loss clients, but some of them also binge occasionally. And the work we do is both. It's about how to minimize the binging and also how to lose weight at the same time. And just as you said, they go hand in hand because it really comes down to less about what are the rules I want to follow. And that's not helpful. Like any binge eater will know, the reason why I binge is because I'm rebelling against the rules. So it's less about the rules and more about how do we create a safety within your nervous system, but also a better relationship with yourself. Because really the binge is just a symptom. It is the after effect of the root cause. And so the work that I do with my clients who do binge is like, what's the root cause? What is going on kind of upstream? And the binge is really not a problem. It's just your brain trying to rescue you from whatever the cause is.
Mm-hmm. And that's definitely something we're going to dive into more today, is looking at how binge eating and weight loss are connected to these feelings of safety and why that can make it hard for our brain to change them at times. But one thing that I thought was really interesting about Lizzie's story that we were chatting about before we hit record was her experience as a Noom coach. So if you're not familiar with Noom, it is a more psychology-based form of weight loss support. And it's been around for quite a few years. And when Lizzie was talking to me, she was telling me that she worked for them for a little bit. She no longer does. But I would be curious to hear like your experience with that program and what you feel like Noom might have left out that people actually need in order to lose weight and heal their relationship with food.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, and I appreciate it because really nobody ever asked me about it. So I worked for Noom from 2020 to 2022, a little more than 2 years. And overall, it was a positive experience. In terms of big box weight loss programs, I would say Noom does a better job of addressing, hey, there's more than just calories in, calories out. It's more than just eat this, not that. They do try and explain, here's what's happening in your brain and why this is hard. So at least at the time, I'm sure much has changed since 2022, but at the time they had a curriculum that was, it's all based on an app and you could learn as you go, but also you could chat with a coach like myself and, get real-time help. The drawbacks are that the curriculum and the teaching around the psychology it's useful, but it's hard to implement. And if there's one thing I have learned about doing private coaching is that everyone's unique challenges are pretty unique. For sure, there are themes, there are commonalities, but I like to say weight loss is a lot like an iceberg, that what to do is the stuff above the surface, follow the steps or eat these things or that type of thing. And why it is hard to follow those steps is what's underneath the surface. It's kind of hidden from our conscious awareness. And with Noom, when you've got this app, it's in your conscious awareness. Okay, I'm learning the curriculum. It's almost like I'm reading a psychology book, but slightly more fun and with fun graphics. But it's not delving into the subconscious of like, why am I self-sabotaging? It's hidden from the user. And so the beautiful part about private coaching, about one-on-one coaching, is I can talk to that individual and say, okay, what is your unique iceberg underneath the surface? Perhaps there was a trauma. You don't feel safe to feel seen. And so in your conscious mind, you desperately want to lose weight, but there's part of your subconscious mind that's like, that is not okay because I don't feel safe. There could be, diet trauma where I just restricted like crazy. And so I want to lose weight, but my brain absolutely associates that with starvation and deprivation and miserableness and so forth. And so the unique iceberg, if you will, underneath the surface is where we really get the real work of making change and changing old patterns that have seemed so frustrating for so many years.
Absolutely. And that's something I hear from people all of the time is, I know what to do, but I'm not doing it. Like, I know I should eat healthy. I know I should be exercising. I know I should be managing my stress and probably calling a friend or going for a walk when I want to eat instead, but they're not doing it and they're not sure why that is. So, can you talk to us more about why that is? Like, why we can know all these things, but maybe why our brain it feels so hard to do that?
Yeah. So where that knowledge lives, that I know what to do, is in the kind of top part of the brain, the most recently evolved, the prefrontal cortex. And that is a beautiful part of our brains. It's where we do all of our reasoning, our math, and we know the diet rules. The thing is, though, when you're stressed, when you're tired, when your resources are a little low, your brain is going into a little bit of survival mode. So a little bit of fight or flight. When you think about fight or flight, our beautiful, incredible bodies say, okay, we need to prioritize safety and survival here. So we're going to take blood away from things that are not essential, and we're going to move them to the heart, muscles, and lungs in case we need to run away. And even if the thing that is stressing you out is a meeting you had at 2:37 in the afternoon, obviously the body is still like, we're moving blood to the heart, muscles, and lungs, which means it's not in your brain. It's not in your prefrontal cortex. So the short answer to why can I know what to do and not do it is because when you're stressed, you don't have access to those rules. You don't have access to all that knowledge because your brain is in survival mode, and your impulsive survival brain is the one at the wheel. And it's like, I only care about what's going to help me right now. And you don't have that capacity to have kind of long range thinking when you're in some kind of a stressed fight or flight, even just tired state.
Mhm. So we get in that state, and then what? How do we get out of it?
Yes,
We
yes,
don't
yes,
have
yes.
blood flow. We can't think straight. Now what?
Such a good question. And this is when I realized like those mind body tools, they're not just cute or nice for those people who do yoga. I was like, oh no, this is science, because 80% of the nervous system is below the neck. So basically, it helped me realize that you cannot think your way out of a stress response. You can't think your way out of tired. And so that helped me really give respect to nervous system regulating tools. And you don't need to sit down on your, meditation cushion for 20 minutes for this to work. You can just take 5 long deep breaths and breathe out. And so there's a whole host of different tools that can help you regulate your nervous system. And again, because our bodies are so amazing and incredible, just a little bit of, hey, body, we're safe. It's okay. And again, using those mind body tools, like there's something called VU breathing. So it's V as in Victor, O. If you make that sound on the exhale, do that 5 times, nice long exhale, that signals safety to the nervous system. What that does is it just allows a little bit of that lovely oxygenated blood back to the prefrontal cortex. And it gives you just a minute of a pause to say, okay, of course I want the cookies. And is that really what's going to help me, reach my goals? How much will I miss the cookies in an hour? Is this just an impulse, or is this really a hunger thing? Or do I want to go ahead and make a choice to eat emotionally, and I'm going to own it? But that nervous system regulating stop and pause allows you to just kind of bring that thinking brain back into the conversation.
I love that. And you said it was VU breathing is what it was
Yeah,
called?
I mean, there's lots of different tools. VU breathing is one of my favorites. One of the methods that I mentioned in my book is basically you got to start from the bottom up. So you start with the body. When I say bottom up, I'm basically talking about how the brain is layered. So the bottom layer is the lizard brain, the survival brain. And so that's where we meet with the body. The next layer up is the limbic brain, our emotional brain, our mammalian brain. And so that's where we talk about our emotions. And so step 2 is let's feel some feelings. And it's not as scary as it sounds. And then step 3 is dealing with the most recent layer of the brain, the primate brain. And that's where we look at our thoughts. So you start with body, and then emotions, and then thoughts. And in my book, we've got the lizard brain, the mammalian brain, and the primate brain. And so I was like, what are 3 animals that all start with an L? So I talk about a lizard, a Labrador, and a lemur, since a lemur is a monkey. So there you go.
I love that. That's so creative. And what a good way to conceptualize like all these different parts of us, because I think what most of us are doing is just trying to use our human brain, like you said, to outthink this of what can we
Yes.
do to just think more positively or be more motivated around this. But like that's not what we need. We need to make sure that we're in this calmer state to gain access back to that part of our brain. I love all these tools that you mentioned. I hadn't heard of the VU breathing before. One of the most basic ones I teach is just the inhale through your nose and exhale out twice as long.
Yeah.
And what I learned from that was that when we're exhaling twice as long, that's signaling safety, because when we're able to exhale that long, what are we not doing? We're not running, we're not hiding, we're not actively engaging with a threat if we're able to take a long, slow exhale. So probably similarly with that, just like anytime we can really signal to our brain and show, hey, you're safe right now through these techniques, that can help us be able to handle our urges and our cravings so much better. And I tell people too, like one of the things for me was that I didn't like about therapy was I felt like I had to have all my ducks in a row to stop binge eating. Like I felt like I was going to have to be this perfect human who never got a negative emotion if I was going to stop binge eating. So I tell a lot of people like what we're going to do is we're going to make sure you can handle any emotion, but it doesn't mean you never have to get a bad emotion. It's just you have a greater capacity to handle them. And that when you do get them, instead of going to food, you're now regulating your nervous system, or you're just telling yourself you're safe. You feel more comfortable with them. And that creates a big difference. So you don't go to food anymore.
Yeah. Would you be interested, like I can walk through a real example with a client where we went through those steps of body, emotions, thoughts, and how that helped her work with her binges?
Absolutely. I think that'd be really helpful.
Great. So when I first started working with this client, she was convinced that it was kind of like clockwork, like a binge, the urge would sort of build up and build up over about 2 weeks. And she just knew that was sort of her timeline, that she had a binge roughly every 2 weeks. At first thought, it was the time was the factor. I was like, well, maybe let's just get curious. And as we worked more together, we realized that actually, the binge was the symptom. It was the downstream effect of what actually was going on in her head. So we'd done a lot of work together, and she had made a lot of progress. And then she traveled one weekend. She was really surprised because the urge to binge was super, super high. And she's like, I don't understand what's going on. This doesn't make sense. And she did end up binging. But as we walked through it backwards, what we could do was we ended up creating what I call an SOS toolkit for her. So she's got a note in her phone of, this is how I walk myself through an urge. And step 1, again, we start with the body. So it's like you put your hand on your heart, or you do that long out breath, or something. You just sort of, it doesn't matter why you're having the urge to binge. It doesn't matter if it makes sense. You just start with, this is what's going on. Let's breathe. Let's put the hand on the heart. Let's do something to regulate the nervous system. And then we move up one layer to the emotions. Again, this was really interesting because she's really, really smart. Part of what makes the binge urge really challenging for her is some negative judgmental self-talk. And so by skipping the emotional layer, she was like, it doesn't make sense. I'm having a great weekend on my travel. Why do I have this binge? And so that emotional layer, the tool is to just label what you're feeling and make it okay. So it's basically step 1 is, what am I feeling? Urge to binge. The step 2 is, I'm allowed to feel this urge to binge. I don't have to fix it. I don't have to know why I'm feeling this urge. It's just allowed to be here. And step 3 is you take a big breath, again, that breathing, and you breathe it all the way out. Let your shoulders drop. And you repeat that 5 times, because a lot of times the painful feeling is like layer 3 or 4. Because at first you're like, I'm frustrated, I'm annoyed. And then you're like, I'm feeling unheard. I feel dismissed. I feel disrespected, something like that. And so that's step 2 is whatever I'm feeling, regardless of it makes sense, if it makes sense, is just, here it is. I'm allowed to feel it. I don't have to do anything to fix it, because the binge is all like, let's fix it fast. And you can just be like, I'm allowed to feel frustrated with what my husband said, whatever it is. And then finally we go to the thoughts. You ask, what's the story I'm telling myself? And so she basically was telling herself the story that, like, I've been doing so good, I should be fine. And as soon as the little whispers of a binge idea came up, she really started judging herself. She's like, I feel I should be farther along in my progress. And so she was beating herself down in her head, but it could hardly even hear it because it was just like, binge is bad. No, 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 no. So when you ask, what's the story I'm telling myself? What am I making this mean? She was making it mean all of her progress was going up in smoke. And we're like, okay, now that we can identify that, we can see why you wanted to binge. The binge was just your brain trying to rescue you from these difficult thoughts. The upstream thoughts were, uh-oh, all of my progress is going to disappear.
I love that. And thank you for walking us through that because I do think that helps conceptualize a bit more for people. And I can really relate to that situation where for me, it used to be like clockwork. I'd go for a while and then just the thought of having the urge would be enough to send me into the binge. It's like I gave up before it even happened because it just
Mhm.
felt like, oh my gosh, it's already going wrong. And I didn't know at that time that just because I had an urge doesn't mean I need to act on it. I just thought, oh, urge is here, time to binge. And that's a big thing that I work on with my clients as well is like, okay, we have the urge, like, how do we create space in between that to kind of give our higher brain time to come back online and remind ourselves that we don't want to do that. But sometimes we don't even have the awareness that we're capable of creating space between that and that it's a good thing that the urge is coming up and that, of course, it's coming up because we really trained our brain to do that. So I think even just like hearing that story, it's like, okay, so many people can relate to this situation. And once we can start to get awareness that the urge itself is not necessarily the problem, it's how we're responding to it and our other stressors and our thoughts about those stressors, then it doesn't seem like such a big deal when the urges do come up.
Yeah. I'm curious, how do you coach a client to, have an urge and be like, "Oh, hey, we don't actually have to act on it. Here's how we have an urge and live with it," versus just, "This is terrible, painful, make it stop."
Mhm. Yeah, it's quite similar to yours where I call them my habit interrupters, which are like a series of little things we can do to kind of interrupt that habit pathway and start to calm our nervous system. So I mentioned the breathing. One of my other favorite ones, I don't know, have you ever heard of bilateral stimulation?
I have, but I would love to hear what your method is.
Yeah, so if someone's watching this on YouTube, they'll see it. If you're listening to it on the podcast, all I'm doing is you toss an object back and forth between your hands and across the center of your body. And what this does is it stimulates both sides of our brain. So it's going in between our left brain and our right brain and our left brain and our right brain. And that diffuses the blood flow, which allows our cravings to become softer and easier. So very in line with what you teach is kind of calming ourselves down first enough so we can like see what's going on and like recognize, okay, I have this urge to binge, and then allowing and accepting it. So I say the two worst things we can do when we get an urge to binge is get surprised about it and get angry about it. Because when we
Mm,
get surprised, it's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this would come up. And it's like your client, this comes up every 2 weeks. Of course it's going to come up. Like this has been
right.
happening for the last 10 years. It's not that
Right.
surprising, or it happens every night at 5 p.m. Because when we're surprised, then we also have a hard time going to our tools and our skills versus when we're not surprised, makes it easier. And what can help with that is maybe making a plan ahead of time or pre-thinking some of these challenging situations. And then when we get angry about our urges, same thing as you just mentioned, it makes them grow, right? It's like the beach ball trying to push it down, it coming back up even stronger. So I teach a lot of acceptance around the urges and even excitement around our urges because I think of it as an opportunity to change our brain. In order for us to change our habits, we literally have to be triggered, right? Like that's how habits work. We have to feel triggered in order for that neural pathway to activate in order for us to change it. So it's like, well, we could hide in a cave our whole life, but we come out of that cave and you're probably still going to want to binge once you see some food that you used to binge on. So it's like now we have this chance, this really awesome opportunity that we get to change our brain right now. We get to act differently. So trying to change that kind of surprise and anger around the urges to like expectation and excitement around it can really help. That's what I do a lot with clients, help them get through it.
I love that reframe of changing the anger and surprise to excitement because I so agree with you that like it gives you the opportunity to, kind of go to the mental gym and do a little workout. And I sometimes will talk about how we sort of intrinsically know that if you sit on the couch and do nothing, your muscles will atrophy. The default setting is your muscles will get weaker, but we don't apply that to our thinking. But the truth is, our default setting is we all have a negativity bias. Without trying, without doing anything, our brains will find the problem. And so you need to try, you need to do something intentionally to have more positive thoughts. And it's similar to what you're talking about with looking at the urge with excitement of like, oh, this is a chance to kind of go to the urge gym and get stronger and do something a little different. I love that.
We're going to the urge gym today. What a good way to think of it. Yes.
Right.
Yes. So I'd love to hear, how do we lose weight if we're not dieting? I know it's
Mhm.
possible, but I know for so many people, the only way they've ever lost weight before is by a strict diet. So this idea that we could lose weight without a strict diet and maybe taking a more intuitive eating approach or just not having such strict rules feels like, I don't know if that could actually work. So how do you address that for people if they're in this lens of, but I need to have a diet in order to lose weight? And how do we actually do it without the strict diet?
So I would say it's less about changing what you eat. It's certainly you can, but it's more about changing how you think about what and how you're eating. So the very nature of a diet is that it's temporary. Diets don't advertise that, but if you think about it, like I'm on a diet, the not said second part of that sentence is, and one day I'll be off of it. And if you're off of a diet, then you kind of go back to normal. And so, however you define normal in your brain is where you will always sort of reset to. So, I tell my clients, I don't ever want you to diet again. I want you to change your locus of control. So, a dieter is either following the rules or rebelling against the rules. But either way, the authority for the decisions and like what's right for me is outside of them. A normal eater makes choices. Sometimes she likes her choices. Sometimes she doesn't like her choices. Sometimes she doesn't even think at all ahead of her choices. But the ownership, the authority, the locus of control is internally. Like I get to choose what is right for me. And so you can say, like, listen, I know that my body does better in terms of weight loss when I have fewer, less bread, let's just say. Like, that's fine. If you want to continue to do that, let's work on that. But let's look at why are you choosing less bread? Because it's a rule or it's because you want to make that choice for you. And so if you're like, all right, I want to bring the locus of control internally, then we say, all right, well, it's more about, is this bread worth it to me? Another tool I offer my clients is 7 or better. So on a scale of 1 to 10, rate this particular food on a scale of 1 to 10. And usually the demarcation line between 6 and 7 is a pretty good rule of thumb that if it's a 7 or above, you're going to be pretty happy about making that choice. Like it tasted great. It was worth it. You enjoyed it. If it's a 6 or below, you can be like, why am I eating this? Is it just because it's in front of me? Is it because I've screwed up earlier in the day? And so I'm like, screw it, I'll start over tomorrow. Again, if it's bread, not all bread is going to be an 8. And so it's like, all right, I want some bread, but if I'm going to have some bread, I want to make it really good. So again, you're choosing what's right for you and what you want and why you want it. And also acknowledging that your choices have logical outcomes. They're not moral, they're not good or bad. They're just kind of like natural consequences. So like if I stayed out in the sun too long, the natural consequence would be my skin would be red. It's not good or bad. It's not moral. I'm not a horrible person because of it. I just have some tender skin. Or if I stayed up late, I would expect to be tired tomorrow. It doesn't make me bad. It just is a natural outcome. And I would encourage my clients to think of their food choices the same way. If you have a salad, it's not good, it's not bad. Natural outcome is you're going to feel a little lighter. Your digestion is going to be a little smoother. If you have a pizza, not good or bad, the natural outcome is you're going to be a little bit more bloated, lots of salt, but maybe the taste was a 10 and it was super worth it. And you own your choice and you move on.
I hope all of my listeners really heard that because I think that is such a good way of, instead of saying like there's no good or bad foods, because the truth is like foods do have an impact on us. They do make us feel a certain way. Broccoli is going to make you feel different than a cookie will feel. And I think sometimes people have a hard time getting to food neutrality. And I always say food neutrality is not saying all foods are equal nutritionally. It's saying I am an equally moral person no matter
Right.
what decision I make. So if I choose the cookie, it's not making me a horrible human being or someone who's done something really wrong. But there is a natural consequence to that or a natural outcome that will result from that choice, and like taking full ownership over it and just saying, hey, I'm going to choose to have 2 cookies right now. And I'm going to take ownership over, I might be a little more tired this afternoon because of that. But if we can take full ownership over it, then we're not guilting ourselves, we're not shaming ourselves, we're saying, this is the choice that I'm making. And I'm owning it and I feel good about it. And I'm going to move on with my life without spiraling and thinking about it for the next 3 days.
Exactly. And I have a recent example of that is we just got back from vacation last week, and vacation's normally not hard for me. Like I like salad, I like my digestion working, but we happened to be in a place that had this cookie shop, and I am fine. I don't need cake. I don't need all of the ice cream, but cookies are my thing. And I'm telling you, Amber, like the dough ball was the size of a baseball. I was like, oh man, these cookies are a 10. They're an 11. So I was like, they're worth it. It was absolutely worth it. I made a choice. They were delicious. I enjoyed them. And yes, when I got home, my digestion was not great and the scale was up. And I was like, no big deal. I expected that. We're just getting back to normal, not because like my normal is what works for me. And so that's kind of an example of the cookie was delicious, but it's not moral. It's a choice.
Mhm. Beautiful. So how can people find you, Lizzie, and learn more about your work?
Sure. So my podcast is the Confident Body Podcast. I've written 2 books. My first book is called You Are a Miracle. And my second book, most recent one, is called Light, the New Psychology of Weight Loss, which is basically a formula for taking this idea of don't diet, instead be curious and open and almost experiment with your weight loss journey so you can learn more about yourself and bring that authority of who is making the choices for me internally, because you're not following some external rules. You're following your own curiosity about what works for you, what doesn't, why did I have that binge, and how can I support myself moving forward and, go to the urge gym and get stronger.
Yeah, I love it. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. This was a great episode. We learned so much about nervous system regulation and how to create safety in our brain, how to work through urges. So I think there's going to be a lot of value for a lot of people in this. And thank you again for coming on.
Thank you so much.